Hello, everybody. My name is Kelsey Halliday Johnson. I'm the executive director of Space Gallery, a arts center and nonprofit based in Portland, Maine, who is proudly partnering with Goethe-Institut Boston on the presentation of the traveling exhibition project TECHNO WORLDS, which was curated by 3 independent curators for Goethe-Institut National. There's a new catalog out that just got published and just hit stores just a week ago, practically. So we are so thrilled to be presenting it. There's incredible scholarship about different musical movements, electronic movements, fashion, culture, and a lot of different global perspectives. The 2 artists that we're bringing together today are each playing with electronic sound and different multimedia practices, not necessarily under the auspices of techno, but we're excited to add to this programming series as TECHNO WORLDS continues to travel internationally here to LA next, and then to Central and South America, back to Europe, and hopefully Asia in the future as well. I'm gonna pass the digital mic over to my collaborator, Annetta Klein from the Goethe-Institut Boston, who's just going to give a little history about their experimental music programming. And then we're going to welcome our guest, AGF, AKA poem producer, and Asha Tamirisa.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. Hello to you all. Thanks for coming. As she said, my name is Annette Klein, and I am the cultural program curator here at the Goethe-Institut. For those of you who don't know the Goethe-Institut, I like to just give a little bit of a description. We are the German cultural institution, and our mission is really to promote international cultural dialogue and exchange. And here in Boston, there are actually 6 in the US. And in Boston, we work with partners in New England, such as Space in Portland, to look at important topics of interest to both countries, Germany and the US, in particular New England, through more of a cultural and artistic lens. So we're not doing politics or science, we're really looking at some of the world's issues and some of the topics through a cultural lens and often through the eyes of artists. And that can be anything from discussions to exhibitions to concerts. And along that line, we have been very focused on electronic music, particularly experimental electronic music for the past 15 years, really. We've done a lot of work and most of our programming with our wonderful partner Non-Event, which I'm sure a lot of you who are from this area would know. They have been really instrumental in building the experimental music scene in Boston and the area. And we've kind of, from our perspective, tried to bring a bit of an international side to that. And so we've been partnering with them to bring artists from Germany and German artists to participate in this concert series, often in the Goethe-Institut, which has a wonderful performance space, which doesn't look like it would be an electronic music performance space because it's very decorated and rococo a little bit, but it has wonderful acoustics and it's been very successful in that way. So this has been wonderful. In fact, we've been in touch with Antje at AG for many years, and unfortunately, it hasn't worked out yet, but I'm hoping that it will. We were closed down for a while, and then COVID came, so that will begin. So we're really thrilled to have Asha, you and AG here today to, for this conversation, which I think will be really fascinating. It does fall within this program of TECHNO WORLDS. This is an exhibition that the Goethe-Institut, as Kelsey said, curated and will be traveling around the world. And we're really thrilled to have it here in the Boston area, up in Portland in the Space Gallery, and it looks absolutely spectacular. So I really recommend you go and look at it. And it's really about also seeing sort of this whole techno movement through the eyes of artists and different kind of aspects of it and where it's actually gone. And for us, it's kind of a place to think about, the more experimental directions that electronic music has gone, and maybe sort of coming off of techno, maybe not. That's really interesting to us. And I think this conversation today with AGF and Asha is, you know, we've got two extraordinary artists who really have been pushing the boundaries of sound and electronic music and spoken word in some cases, also aspects of activism, putting some of their real, you know, beliefs and working in this field and really pushing it in wonderful directions. And so we're really excited to have you here and to share your work with us and to join in a conversation, which will touch on some aspects of gender issues and things, which we also feel is something that's really important to think about. So I will pass the mic back to Kelsey. Before that, I would like to thank her, Kelsey and her team, for the wonderful work they've done and the enthusiasm they've put into this whole project. It's been really wonderful working with you, and I look forward to the rest of this project and hopefully for projects in the future. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. And likewise, a total pleasure to work with you. And we do have some upcoming programs that are part of TECHNO WORLDS, including some local Maine and New England electronic musicians this Saturday night for a dance party with the electronic presenters Unheard of Portland. That seems like it's going to be fascinating, and we'll have custom lights for it. Very excited. The venue has beautiful photography from the exhibition, so you'll get a chance to see the show a little bit. We'll have some more work published online. There's playlists to involve yourself in. I hope you'll take a look at the catalog for those of you who are joining us here in your lunch hour or wherever you are tuning in from. And it's my honor to introduce our first speaker. Each of the speakers is going to just give a short presentation about a little bit about their work to ground it, and then we're going to go from there. If you, we ask that people who are on the call to keep yourself muted, but if you'd like to put something in the chat as a question, we'd love to let the conversation be organic, and hopefully Asha and AG have questions for each other as well. Let me get AG up here. AGF, aka poem producer, is a digital songwriter, electronic musician, sound artist, composer, poet, curator, educator, and public speaker. Born in 1969, raised in East Germany. She's lived and worked in Luoto, Finland. You should tell me how to pronounce that better. Since 2008, her work emphasizes the relationship between language, sound, voice, and communication, which is expressed in music, audiovisual live performances, digital communication, sound installations, sound for other visual media, exhibitions, and conceptual works. I encourage you to take a look at her bio and her website and the work that you can find online, or consider streaming some of her sounds. She's released 30 long player records and numerous collaborations with some people that I hold near and dear and love as heroes. So I'm so honored to have her and see how they continue the legacy of people like Eliane Radig and yeah, neat stuff. So I'm honored to hear about what you're going to present with us. And let me get the slide up and I will make myself invisible, and please join AG.
Is there, how's the sound?
Sound is great. And I do want to mention we are having a little bit, sound is perfect now. We have been having some technical issues. So if we do, I'm going to put something in the chat to AG and hopefully we can troubleshoot it.
Yes.
But apologies.
I will try.
Some tech issues. So thank you for your patience with all of us, everybody.
So hi, everyone. I'm AG. I'm indeed just met Eliane Radig last week with my band, The Lapetites. Isn't that amazing? I met her in person the first time in 6 years, and it has been absolutely crazy, beautiful experience. I just today published a post about it. I wanted to show you just quickly where I've been in the last years. So I'm coming a long way, 30 years in. I've done electronic music. I would say at this point, I'm kind of post electronic music, I think. what you can see there is kind of like a montage of where I see myself somewhere between composting and mycelium and soil and feminism and women on the ground collaborating. And yeah, so this is just an image from a feminist camp I did 2018 in Indonesia with different groups of people, and I've kind of designed a feminist workshop there for us, sound interventions, somehow an outdoor thing where we go outside and use space and realities, social political realities, as well as the actual space to make work together. And yeah, so I'm calling in from Finland, where I now live, but I come from East Germany. I was raised and born there and lived 20 years behind the wall. So with whatever it was called, socialist realism. And it has, of course, immensely informed me. I mean, 20 years, and my parents have only lived in the GDR, so in this part behind the wall. So it's a very big part of my identity to be East German, and also raised communist and raised under communist government. And this is now 30 years ago, but it is still relevant, as we also see at the moment what's going on geopolitically in this space. So it's still crazy, and it's still falling out. So I consider it actually kind of like almost like a loop, like there's the techno back. I think I don't want to talk about this much, just wanted to let you know because it's very specific about me. I was 20 when the wall came down, and I've lived all over the world. I lived in London, I lived in the US for a while. I lived mostly in Berlin for like 20 years or something. And now, since a while, I live in Finland, and I have found this very old car. There's the island where I live, it's called Hailuoto, and it's in North Finland, 200 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle. And I have a Finnish partner, that's why we are here. And I'm lucky as hell to be in this country with a social security system that functions still and is still for everyone. So I'm quite lucky to live in a space where capitalism hasn't had that much yet its roots. It's enough still, but you know, yeah. So I just have been in the last maybe 15 years working also very specifically with, let's say, feminist organizing or feminist networking. So while I'm now living in the countryside on an island in the far north, I base a lot of my interactions, obviously, of being for many, many years in the city and also traveling the world as a musician or touring as AGF and playing concerts in all possible places. And it has been huge privilege, absolutely unexpected for me. I have no education. I did not learn anything. I did everything just on the fly, and until today, it's the same. So you can carry on with the slides. I just wanted to roughly show the transition going from being in a city to moving to the periphery, which had also to do with my private life, getting older, but having a child, but also moving beyond the night space, and huge urge to be outside, work with nature, look into specific life and incorporate this into my music and find different ways to exist, kind of, basically, not just prepare to be for the night space. So this is what I've been doing the last 15 years here in the North, and it's been very beautiful work, and at times also very challenging. I have done lots of feminist networking. I'm part of Female Pressure. I will show you later more about it. And yeah, you can go on with the slide. You can go on with the slide. So yeah, somehow I've kind of come to think of the work I'm doing as something that I've taken from radical mycology, like something that is about underground networking, mycelium, making connections, intercommunication. And I've kind of applied this to the way how I now do music, or also sound, and also all sorts of collaborations, whatever I'm asked. And it is, in a way, how I see it, it is like I'm growing sound. My composition is not based on notation or a grid or a keyboard or a piece of software, although I do still use software, but I'm looking beyond at this moment, and I don't want to anymore be confined by the grid. I don't want to be confined by binaries, or confined by electronic music has to sound like that. And of course, there is such a long history of electroacoustic music, you know, all sorts of musics. And of course, I'm building on top of amazing artists with that. So what I'm seeing in my networking and in my, I cannot make any more a distinction between myself, the music, the life, the networks, and my position, frankly, my political position as well. So I have been thinking about music in a way about its frequency and time. So the more I give in to that just simplicity of that kind of idea, the more my practice also got more varied. Oh God, you know what I mean, wider. So yeah, I'm growing, and the sound is growing, and I'm growing with other people, and carry on. What else did I want to say? Yeah, carry on. Listening has been playing a huge part. I mean, listening, in my opinion, is also really a key part to break the binary, because there is so much more we have to find out about. I don't know what's possible because it's clearly not good. Like nothing is really working. Everything is more or less disintegrating, and I don't know where you guys are all at, but I mean, I know many of you are in the US, so I'm not, you know exactly what I mean, I suppose. So I'm doing a lot of workshops. I'm doing a lot of sound camps. I have done very many local work here in Halliday. I had a arts organization for a few years, and it's still ongoing. And we're doing a lot of outdoor sonic wilderness, breaking down what is taken for granted and what is pushed at us, basically resisting also all sorts of structures that are supposed to be electronic music or techno or arts practice or the life we have to live. So money, you know, making a living and so on. So yeah, carry on. You can go on with the slides. It's just one example here with my friend Ryoko Akama, who's also with me in the Appetites, a music band. We have been collaborating and taking a boat's journey and working with the sound of the sea and a Geiger counter to protest a nuclear power plant building nearby. This is when my work I did with kids on the island for many years. I had a little media lab, and it was a very local, small media thing. And from there, I also do a lot of feminist, like literal undigging of forgotten women. So I have a series of language, poetry, sound, many languages already, five editions, where I'm looking for the forgotten women in our stories. And this, for example, is about Russian women. The work is called Dizzy and Turba, and it was maybe 2019 I released that work. Very crazy at the moment to look back. Yeah, this is another, this is a collaboration I'm doing with BioArt Society. It's an organization or like an association I'm part of, where I'm almost the only sound artist, mixing with scientists and all sorts of like other artists who work with bioart. Here I was doing a camp with them in an even much more north of Finland. It was a beautiful piece we did there, kind of. It's online. I can, if somebody's interested, I can send this work we did there. Yeah, what else? It's already 15 minutes. I didn't really check. This is us in the rice field, Line of Women in the Rice Field 2018 with my feminist camp there. This is an amazing piece. I don't think, can you hear this? Can I play this? No, it's a PDF, of course. So there's also a video piece to this. This is us in Vietnam, in Lenin Park, in the middle of Vietnam, also Goethe-Institut, by the way. It was a beautiful sonic wilderness workshop, very intense. We basically silently meditate, or like meditating with this tree after half the city was deforested there. Go on. This is Hilo to the island where I'm at, Blueberry Techno. This is an instrumenting building camp where I've invited, based on a grant I had, I invited artists to develop instruments for making sound outside. It was beautiful. We did mushroom instruments and all sorts of crazy synthesizers. Carry on. Here's the mushroom instrument. Carry on. Yeah, this is something I'm keep studying, radical mycology. I've mentioned this quickly. It's really informed my ideas about sound and music and the interaction. Also, obviously, I'm a mushroom fan, but yeah, I also have a Twitter account, Deep Mycelium, so I'm really studying mushrooms there. And carry on. And in the last years, I've done more and more workshops, also, of course, in the pandemic, online, but also in reality, and more sharing what I've learned with others. And for example, this is a workshop we did at the Darmstadt summer course last year, a year ago. Sonic writing and soundings. It was a beautiful workshop. Carry on. Extinction stories, interspecies collaboration. I've worked with the choreographer here, and we've used the sound of 45 extinct species to make an impossible hyperforest who is quite traumatic and sad, actually, because these species are extinct, but thinking about what is after the techno, what's going to happen after technology. Carry on. Yeah, sound is growing. I spoke about this already. Carry on. Yeah, and recently, the last 2-3 years, I concentrate on this new space I'm building with others, and we are making something that is more related to political sound, I would say. I'm trying to think about the political sound itself, and I'm trying to develop new angles to it with others, and I'm inviting others to join me to make these happen and investigate more in audio what is possible, what is not a song, a podcast, a radio show, a record, but what else could there be? A sound is so I'm experimenting with this, like really hands-on, not much thinking, just doing. And one section of this is feminist sonic technologies. It is also us thinking about what have mostly women or feminists come up with to change the world. It's something that I've been participating in with many other women all over the world, and including many here right now. So I'm thinking and trying to identify things that we have invented and thought of and made happen to change and hopefully improve and break down things that are not working or are shitty or painful or violent or all these things. So that I've done now maybe 27 episodes on Recon, and I recommend you to go there and listen to them. The time, it's nothing quick. So I will show you a little bit more. Can you carry on? Yeah, these were the violences I was just talking about. Carry on. For example, I invited this Chilean collective Las Tesis to make an episode with me there. It was a beautiful collaboration. We made an interview and we thought about how Las Tesis, Colectivo Las Tesis, is using sound in their powerful work. I hope you know about them. And if not, you have to check it out. It's a very, very strong work, which comes out of a political movement, has influenced political movement, has changed real politics and a real country, and led to, in my opinion, now the most progressive government in the world. I think, unfortunately, their constitution was rejected, but nevertheless, they even got there. So that has been great. How's my sound going? I hope good. Carry on. Yeah, this is just an example of like this is Indonesia, but just carry on. It's just a mood picture. Yeah, I want to quickly tell about Female Pressure in case you don't know it. It's a network. It exists over 20 years. It was founded by Electric Indigo. I am part since 2004, and I have been really working hard with this network to expand it, to make it better, to do things. I, for example, do for a big part the Twitter account, and I'm part of the mailing list, and we are more than meanwhile 3,000 women from 80 countries, and we are really, in my opinion, have changed or helped changed the landscape in electronic music and also techno, possibly, I hope. With our fact studies and our interactions and our works. So I find this really important to mention because these collaborations we made there and the network work we did in this context has shown me that it is indeed possible to do something and to change things. And this is also how I've gained strength and experience and also confidence in changing things, because sometimes it seems that it's not possible. But when you once can see that it's possible, it's kind of hard to not carry on. And this is what I feel I'm doing. The next slide. I'm done in a second. For example, in 2016, we did this project with the Kurdish freedom fighter women, which are still now under attack and actually just still get assassinated and murdered almost every week in Syria, Iraq, or even somewhere else, Iran at the moment. We did a huge awareness and solidarity campaign for them back then, and I'm still collaborating with some of those networks we've built there, and carry on. Yeah, and this is the website I've been talking about, or the project I've been talking about, RecOn. Again, inviting you to come there and have a look and welcome to feedback. And I'm now mostly outputting sound there at the moment. And I'm also at the moment receiving a grant from a Finnish private foundation to be able to commission women from parts of the world that are very hard to so far collaborate with. And I'm doing work with, for example, I worked with the indigenous Batonga woman who is in the Zambezi Valley in Zimbabwe, fighting for her native tongue to be not erased. She's teaching language and doing arts there. Or I worked with a Dalit feminist theorist who is based in Delhi, and she has written an amazing book about Dalit feminism, and we have made work together. And so I'm expanding my friendships, I'm learning every day, and I'm studying to, yeah. I'm interested in understanding how does it work to want something to change, to reach out for it to change, to learn how to do that, and how to build relationships like that, and how to make it into work, and how to put it out, and how to, you know, at the same time make this music or that sound that stays and travels then disconnected or being less connected to where it's coming from. So at the moment, I'm experimenting with different forms of releasing that work. For example, there's also a work I just did with the Kurdish Iranian composer, where we precisely look into the Kurdish question within music, and we release it in the browser, so you can go there and listen only in the browser, and there's a reader attached to the release where you can go deeper and deeper if you like, and also learn about how you can organize or help, or how other people organize, and try to basically condense knowledge into, I don't know, is it a song or is it not a song, but it's not a sing-along. I don't know. So yeah, I think that's maybe so far, but what is there more? Yeah, and lately also I started to organize the last 2 years with East Block Sound, something friends of mine and I felt was necessary because we felt that the former East Block was so abandoned, and it's very evident in the COVID stats. For example, the first 20 countries that have the worst COVID stats per population, like deaths per population, are Eastern European places. And it's quite often people don't know that. And also in general, culture has been quite sad in these regions. And so that we're changing it, and we want to do it together. And so I'm organizing with this. We have a Discord, and we have thought about diaspora. We're fighting. It's very, since the war came out, it was very difficult for us. We had lots of Russian and Ukrainian members, and it was very, very difficult. And it is still very difficult, but we made a great solidarity compilation for Ukraine, and collected more than 3,000 euros for feminist and queer spaces on the ground in Ukraine, and we continue to do so. And yeah, and we're figuring out what it means to be former East Bloc diaspora, while I'm on top of it German as a triple package, but the others are mostly, you know, from more like Eastern European countries, but also reaching out to other East Bloc states like Vietnam, Cuba, Angola, and so on. So it's a total different kind of, maybe really different world for you guys, but it's also very important to me. And actually I have spent the last half a year mostly in that space because it has been so traumatic and painful and shocking. And so this has been a full-time job in a way also. So yeah, so this is how I see myself now. I'm like in these places, feminist spaces, helping diasporas that are basically hugely neglected, you know, and trying to be useful. Yeah, that was a good ending, I hope.
It was a wonderful ending. I mean, I feel for your pain, and thank you for the inspiring resilience about like, can this enact real change? And I think it's a pretty interesting moment for global organizing with, like, we already knew that tools like Twitter and things had political power, maybe pre-Elon Musk, but the possibility of, yeah, the possibility, you said it, the possibility of organizing and the normalization finally of like video chat and global connections in your work and your organizing work is so palpable, and that's really inspiring. I'm also really struck, and I just want to make a comment too for those people tuning in from Maine and New England, the pictures you shared of the Finnish landscape resonated with the Maine landscape so much, and the fact that you are making blueberry techno. Blueberries are a big thing here in Maine, so I'm gonna be thinking about blueberry techno, and I'm also a mushroom nerd. I love deep mycelium, and there's a lot of mushroom folks.
Yeah, I think the Radical Mycology founder is from Portland.
Yes.
Peter McCoy. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Yeah. And I almost got Peter here already, but then also COVID came. Because I was going to make a mushroom camp, and it failed for now, but I still hope it's going to happen one day. Yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful transition to Asha too. One of Asha's most recent projects was based in I'm going to unpin you and get Asha up here. We'll have some time to talk with both of them after Asha presents, but one of Asha's most recent projects involved the landscape in a park in Portland. And so this like environmentally situated sound listening feels very of this moment. And I'm watching AG's slides, I'm realizing what a beautiful pairing this is for conversation. So thank you to Annetta for collaborating with me on it again. And thanks for being here, Asha. For those of you tuning in from further away, maybe Asha is new to you, or through the Goethe-Institut network in Europe, Asha Tamirisa works with sound, computational media, video, and film and performance art. Asha's creative work is informed by critical studies fields such as feminist science and technology studies, critical race theory, and media archaeology. Her full bio can be found on the site. She is currently the assistant professor of music at Bates College and holds her PhD in computer music and multimedia from Brown University, has been a wonderful collaborator of space and a colleague and peer and a gardener too. There's lots of earthiness in this call. So I welcome you to present, and I'll stick myself on mute.
Great. Hi, everyone. And thanks so much, Kelsey and Annetta and AG too. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Make sure I share sound. All right. So I'll try to leave time to actually show you some work, so I can so you all can get a sense of some of the projects that Kelsey mentioned, as well as some other recent projects. Just a little bit of background. I started working with sound mostly through digital means, so working with programming tools and mostly designing sort of unpredictable or subtly unpredictable sonic systems, and also designing interfaces through which I could engage those systems in novel and sort of individual ways. So that was a bulk of how I started working with sound. And then I had the opportunity to work with the ARP 2500, speaking of Eliane Radigue, which was a synthesizer she used a lot. And this is a synthesizer from the 1970s. And this kind of got me working with audio hardware more, and also kind of understanding more, or becoming more curious about the histories of sound technologies. So again, this is a synthesizer from the 1970s, and not too many of them were manufactured, maybe about 100. And so this kind of got me more interested in working in a more tactile way with sound, as well as investigating the histories of the tools that I was using. So this led to some instrument building and interface design, and I guess a kind of greater engagement with performance and sound. So using, I used to perform a lot. Things have been obviously very different these last few years, but working both with the digital tools that I was working with, as well as hardware. And most of these performance contexts were improvisational or kind of structured improvisation, as well as collaborative, so improvising with other people. I have released a few recordings, but not nearly as prolifically as AG. So most of the recording work I've done has been sort of happenstance, a recorded performance, for instance, or a compilation, a collaborative compilation. And that's been a kind of fruitful site of collaboration. Speaking of gender and activism, a group of friends and I, between the years of 2013 and 16, roughly, were kind of commiserating about the cultures of electronic music that we were finding, as well as what it felt like to learn about electronic music in the spaces that we were learning about it. And so we formed this sort of collective that was a number of different artists of a number of different ages. And we organized a lot of workshops, so like technical skill shares, as well as artist talks and folks like Tara Rogers, TECHNO, which is started by Bonnie Jones and Suzanne Thorpe. Maria Chavez spoke, and they all performed as well as part of this series. It was also an effort. At the time, I was in graduate school in Providence, Rhode Island, and there was a lot of a feeling of divide between the artist activity in the institutions and in the community. And so one of our goals was to, one, have the institutional resources support the artists in the community, as well as build community between the artists that were a part of those institutions and the artists that were living there. I think if we get to it, this is a kind of interesting example of what it's like to try to do activism that's partially institutionally funded, and then kind of we sort of went underground, I would say, or underwater, as we started to notice the institution kind of parading our effort around as their own. And so the institution kind of like co-opting our activist work. So if we get to that, we'll get to that, or I'm happy to have conversations later with anybody. So I'll just talk about a couple recent projects, and I want to make sure we have some time for conversation. So I'll try to move through these somewhat quickly. I guess the more recent projects I've done have been more site-driven or site-specific or site-responsive. So kind of moving away from more traditional performance contexts. This first piece was actually in collaboration with Non-Event, who works a lot with the Goethe-Institut in Boston. And it was a collaboration sort of with an installation artist, Fujiko Nakaya, who had a number of these ephemeral fog sculptures up at different natural and architectural sites in Boston. And Fujiko Nakaya talks about using fog as a way to manifest invisible conditions of like humidity and temperature and wind through the behavior of the fog. And so in this performance, I was thinking about one, how to make sure that the natural context kind of stayed a priority. So bringing in technology that was kind of obscured in this case by these mirrors, so the natural site was kind of reflected back, and also how to make the kind of invisible properties of sound visible. So there are these speaker cones on the ground with these mirrors, and the mirrors will vibrate as the sound is propagated through the speakers. And I think it's probably just best to show you a short video, so I'll do that. And I'm doing it through Vimeo because the latency seems like an issue over PowerPoint. So I'll just play a little bit of this. Maybe I'll just talk over it. So it was in a park, a public park. And so there were folks on their Sunday walks walking by and kind of stumbling upon this. So very much, kind of a strange performance setting was sort of a durational performance, I think of 2 hours. And maybe I will skip, I'll talk a little bit about a piece I did with space as well. This was so I work with sound, but I also work a lot with video. And so in 2020, so after the onset of the pandemic, Space Gallery did this amazing project of site-specific works. And it was a great way, I think, to have art in the community safely in terms of COVID. And so the ask was for the artist was to respond to the histories of specific sites in the city. And so the site that I was working with was the former block of the Portland Sugar House, which was a sugar refinery and kind of very clearly tied the city's history as well as the kind of wealth generated in the city to slave labor in the West Indies. And so in the piece, which was kind of projected into the window of the building that's on this in this area now, I'm using sugar to kind of metaphorically describe kind of all of the histories that get dissolved into our present. So yeah, I'll show a little bit of this. And so this is a kind of like 10-minute video that was on loop at the site. And again, I'll just show a couple minutes. And I'll do the thing where I talk over it a little bit. I also forgot to mention that the text is from an archival video that's kind of this sort of educational film about sugar manufacturing. And I found it really peculiar that in the archival video, it's all in this sort of passive voice. So, the sugar gets cut and crushed, but there's no mention of who's doing that labor. In other words, kind of erasing the human part of this history. And I'm going to keep talking over it. The other thing that I'm now remembering is, thinking of this process of refining sugar is analogous to like refining history. I'll show one more project that Kelsey alluded to, which was in a public park in Portland, Maine, Congress Square Park. And I was asked to do something in this public park site. And I wanted to, of course, engage sound, but I also wanted to be sure that I was thinking about the ways that people use this site. So it's a resting place, it's a place where people eat, it's a place where people work, it's a place where people converse. I wanted to work with sound in the space, but not in a way that interrupted the usual activity. Also, the piece was meant to be up for a month, so it was hard to engage any sort of electronics in the site. So the idea I came up with was building wind harps or aeolian harps, which basically, if you take any stringed instrument outside and the wind blows past it, it'll vibrate the strings, and basically the harmonics of those strings will sound, and it produces a kind of ethereal sound. So my thought was that if I'm using wind, wind doesn't happen all the time, or doesn't happen strongly all the time. So the instruments would not be sounding constantly, and also the kind of frequency range that they occupy is audible, but not too obtrusive. So these wind harps, which are the kind of dark box here, they were attached to the lampposts in the park. And again, I'll just play a short excerpt so you can get a sense of mostly what they sound like. Oh yeah, and as part of this project, This video is from, there was one day that I went and put contact microphones, basically small pickups or microphones on these instruments, and amplified them so they were a little bit more audible. So this is documentation from that day, but it'll give you a sense of what they sound like. And I think I'll cap it there so we have some time for conversation. And if questions arise that bring me to other projects, I can share a little more. But thanks so much.
Woohoo! That was fabulous. Let me get AGF here. I'm struck by the fact that, we're here under this exhibition, on the occasion of this exhibition about electronics, but I love that both of you move between analog and digital worlds, and that maybe that last project was a answer to AG's question before about what happens in the post-technology world. Can you maybe both answer and talk about a little bit about how you kind of decide on what sound format a project is going to take, or is there a moment of I want this to be digital, I want to use traditional instruments, build my own instruments, and that kind of part of your kind of the creative conceptualization of projects?
First of all, Asha, amazing work. I'm so impressed. Beautiful. Very cool. Did we meet before?
It's possible we've at least emailed.
Yeah, because I now suddenly think, wow, I met you before. Maybe at Brown or something.
Oh.
Or I don't know, somewhere. Possible. I'm not very often in the US, but anyway, technology has been the course to my liberation. While the wall came down, the internet came, and I always felt like I'm an internet person and also a digital musician and a digital composer. But I've been so disappointed by realizing where technology has brought us. And of course, not all technology, and just the one who's winning. And it's not a surprise to me, actually, and it shouldn't have been a surprise to me because I was raised with Marx already when I was little. So I should have known, and I knew that this would happen, but I didn't expect it to be so fast and so bad. I'm very disillusioned with current technologies and the way how technology capital has extracted wealth from musicians and music and artists, and it's ongoing and it's getting worse, and AI and VR and all that stuff. I mean, for me, I'm such a tech-free nerd. It pains very much to admit that this should have not happened like that, and we should have been smarter with that. I've tried. I have vivid memories of being in the US in 2009 and screaming at people because they were so enthusiastic about Facebook, and I was absolutely never, because that was clear from the start. But it's in all the technologies, and I think it will be now up to us if it's possible to repair it, or possible to redirect it, or possible to critically examine what's going on. And for example, the works you show now, Asha, are absolutely outstanding stuff, like the work in the park with the mirrors and the clouds, and oh my God, and the fog. I love that work, and I need to have the Vimeo link. But that's pretty basically it. At the moment, I'm thinking about where to go from this. I do think being underground, being small, being removed from capital as much as possible. While we live under capitalism, so we have to function for that unless we die. But I think something about that, and also refusal, not give this monster everything that it wants, and be creative with it, but still use it for us also. You know, it's kind of, for example, musicians, everything has been taken from us. Like I cannot release music anymore, basically, the way how I would like to, because now I cannot even press vinyl because I cannot make tapes. Nobody has CD players. There is no more, you know, we couldn't play for 2 years. We couldn't go and play shows. It's been interesting, and it's almost funny how all the ways we can survive is being taken away from us. Now Bandcamp, who was one little hope in this horizon, or was one for a while quite good for us, was sold to a gaming company, and now I'm dealing with like Web3. I'm trying not to curse, but people I don't want to deal with. It's quite impressive. And again, if you're Marxist, you know that this should happen, and it would happen, and it's still incredible that it happened like it happened, like that somebody like Elon Musk is now fucking with everyone online and playing some sort of god there. It's like just ridiculous. And how he, like, I just saw an image of the satellites they put in space, the US put in space. So it's like, you know, I'm not quite sure. Maybe I give over to you, Asha. I'm sure you're a professor. You have more articulated.
I'm not sure about that. You can ask my students. But I guess in terms of my own work, as far as, you know, how do I kind of navigate technological landscapes? I think for now, or most recently, it's been kind of a curiosity about the histories of certain technologies, as well as kind of you know, responding to certain sites, as well as kind of you know, kind of the tactile process and materiality of working with different technologies. That's kind of guided me into those decisions. And yeah, I guess I agree with the complexity of, in terms of thinking about virtual networks at once. You know, as AG's activism shows us, it allows us to connect with each other and find community and figure out how to create networks of support. And at the same time, that creates the possibility of surveillance, as well as, you know, having to use these tools that are not of our own design. So there's definitely that sort of double bind that I'm not sure. I guess, you know, in terms of musicians, I've seen a lot of people talking more about, you know, the costs of touring and, you know, what it's like to financially try to make a life as an artist, and what it's like to have to deal with Spotify or internet networks and leaking albums when you're trying to survive. So I'm grateful to see a little bit more conversation about that. There was an article in The Guardian recently where they were asking musicians basically what they thought. And I thought that was, yeah, there's like efforts for musicians to unionize. So I do see some activism that seems pointed in the right direction, I guess.
Thank you both for those juicy thoughts. Much more worldly focused than my simple question, and like really interesting things to think about how things are changing for musicians. I'd love to turn to both of your experiences organizing within gender, within electronic music, And just generally talking about network building, whether that's hyper-local, like your community efforts, AG, teaching, like building classroom size networks with students and collaborating, or trying to like build a network of practicing artists that are trying to understand a phenomena or, you know, commit to activism under the same cause. What advice, I guess, would you each share about what the best tools are for organizing groups of people and what's been successful for you?
I really think there is no recipe for everything, you know, everything depends. For example, working locally here on the island is a complete different, you know, collaboration than doing something online or offline online. And what's the consistency of the groups you're working with, you know, everything matters: race, gender, class, periphery, inside, outside, age, ability, you know, we know all that. It's really something I've lately realized. It is really about doing it. It's so much more about doing it, you know, just do it. Like, I recommend everyone to start, and it kind of always works. Like, for example, you just have to go through it, you know, deal with, it's like the building blocks of any Lego or something. It just go step by step, and nothing else can be said about it, because every space will be different. And it's also really beautiful in a way like that, because you also can choose what is your community, what is your, or you can think about what are my skills, what are my strengths. Every person is different and has different skills and abilities, and to be able to figure this out for yourself, where you can be and what you can do and how you can contribute. I'm sometimes thinking any of these things are good, you know, whatever you can do. We need everything at the moment to defeat fascism, basically. And this is even in the arts or in the music. It's in yeah. Now, for example, I decided to go offline with a friend from Prague. Her name is Mathilde. She has a synth library in Prague and Czech Republic. And we decided we make next spring a tour together by train through Eastern Europe. And we go for almost like as little money as they can afford, because it's not going to be lots of money. We go from place to place and we meet with feminists there, and we do either whatever we say, we do whatever you want. We play a show, we make a workshop, we make a lecture, we go to the uni, or we go to your girl's house, or we cook, or whatever you want to do, we're going to do it. And we're going to go by train through Eastern Europe, because these spaces have been exploited, ignored, you know, the typical hierarchies of oppression, like just the same stuff that happens everywhere. So, you know, every situation demands something else. For example, what you've been doing, Asha, and with your feminist collective, I forgot the name, but what you did is super awesome. And I did similar things, you know, or I did, and I did this, I don't know if you know it, I did this visibility blog in 2015, where maybe I know you from there. Are you in there, Asha? I know you. So this, you know, sometimes the stupidest, simplest idea can be amazing, and sometimes it's so difficult and it costs so much time and endurance to do it. But still, if nobody's going to do it, nobody's going to do it. It's just like that. I don't know. Is this what you asked? Kind of.
Yeah, I guess one thing I think about a lot, especially because I've been kind of wrestling with institutional logic for a while, which is, you know, as art institutions, and especially like the last 5-10 years, or academic institutions, are all trying to undergo this diversity and inclusion effort, what that means for activism, which might see synergy there. but I'm recalling, speaking of Twitter, a tweet that I think Crystal Fleming posted, I'm not sure when, but it's something like, when they say inclusion, it means inclusion into racial capitalism, imperialism, patriarchy, colonialism. And so, as we might feel like, oh, the institutions are finally trying to change, sometimes that's window dressing, and most often it's not systemic change, or most often it's not a kind of changing of the guard or breaking of the guard. Most often it's kind of instrumentalizing those who have been at the margins into doing kind of the dirty work of the institution, or making the institution look good but not improving the lives of the people in the community. So I think that's one thing I've been thinking a lot about, is, are these opportunities, are they good for the institution? Are they just good for the institution, or are they also good for the people? But maybe the answer is just not working with these institutions.
Yeah, and what also happens with the inclusion and diversity and identity stuff is that it makes so much negativity between people who are actually already in the margins. So what you've observed is that quite often the white man is not in arguing at all. They are like, keep doing their stuff, and they have enough, and they have everything. But the ones who actually are in the margins, they're fighting for the little piece of the cake, and they're fighting for how to call themselves and what language to use. And the oppressions are so layered, and then, they're denying each other agencies and stuff. So it's really so important what you just said, that it's not just about that. And while we're doing it, we're learning, right? We're learning that we are greenwashing or pinkwashing or whatever washing, and that we are not really making change. So how do we make change? And I don't think it will be fast, but hopefully, I worry about the divisions, and I'm especially every issue that comes up, especially the kind people, they have more trouble. I don't know. It drives me crazy how also misinformation, obviously we know all this, but like how much crazy stuff is out there. And while it's not affecting me personally, or maybe us in general at the moment, like I have friends in Iran, I have friends in Afghanistan. One of my best friends, her people are under genocide. I have Russian and Ukrainian friends. Both of them are fucked up so bad. They're so under attack. It's crazy. And then the rest of the world is bickering about it. So I'm thinking about a lot how to be kinder, how to make more connections under this attack, this constant attack. What I've just spoken earlier to you guys before we started this, discussing with DeForest Brown, who wrote this book about Black counterculture, putting techno as a music, but also as a movement and as a cultural event for people to, make their own world, being constantly under attack, but still making innovative work. But then all the bickering about it is so loud that we have to, I don't know, maybe it comes often down to listening again, to listen, be patient. I mean, I'm now in my 50s, early 50s, I've seen so many different things. It's interesting how, I've seen communism or wannabe communism. I've seen the neoliberalism. I've seen capitalism now. I mean, what can we now do with all that is what I'm thinking. And so even it relates to the music, It relates to what we're singing and what we're listening and what we're dancing to and what we're building. So, yeah.
And if I could bring it back to the show, I mean, it relates to the show too. And I just want to, for context for the conversation, DeForest Brown has work in the show and in the publication. AG was saying before the call, which is what she was alluding to, that she has his Make Techno Black Again show, which also the people from Unheard of Portland for the dance party came in with the hat on. So well represented in this project. And the work is fabulous. And there's also work in the show, and I just want to give huge kudos to the curators, photography by Tobias Zeleny that is shot in the queer underground electronic music scene in Ukraine in 2017, which was, you know, supposed to be responding to Crimea at that time, which now is, I mean, is an atrocity, but a drop in the bucket to what we're experiencing now. So
it's still going on. I mean,
right,
yeah,
the show. I'm just going to ask one more question, and if anybody who is on the call has a burning question, please put it in the chat, but we are over time. So, but I do want to just quickly open up one last thing that is such a striking parallel in your work, maybe working from two different sides, which is, you know, I also have had a project undertaking talking about, you know, undersung or completely forgotten feminist histories, AG, and I appreciated that slide again about Russia, these Russian figures, and then that really, you know, whether that's actually like a critical history perspective of like trying to get these stories back out there, or in Asha's case, like a symbolic piece holding place, like the sugar dissolving for these, you know, laborers, this, you know, all of these humans that are not discussed in relationship to a history. And so I was just hoping maybe we could close with just a thing about what role critical history has on your practice, whether that's teaching or creative, and what form that takes, just talking about whether or not that's research or making work, and where you're thinking about history in your work right now.
I can just add a bit that might connect some dots in terms of like how we think about the category of women in electronic music, and you know how a lot of the Western activism around gender in electronic music has kind of like evaded the question of labor, and so thinking about like, you know, we say there's no women in electronic music, or that's like a kind of like a byline or something. But if we think about who's making the electronic music tools, it's often women in the global South who are actually the ones producing the tools, or we have this kind of Western image of technical skill as being hyper masculine, but that's a very Western idea of technicality. And so, yeah, I guess, you know, thinking about, if we look at the history of electronic music in a more capacious way, we see that, you know, there were women in electronic, there have always been women. In fact, there still are, you know, women all over electronic music. It's just that our category of women doesn't account for the many ways women have been in electronic music forever, or in computation forever. And if we were to be more capacious with that understanding of gender in these practices, it would bring us closer to thinking about imperialism and colonialism. So yeah, I guess just one way of that, thinking critically about history sort of shapes the way we think about gender in these practices.
Yeah, that's very genius what you said there. And also, I think it's also that we kind of, since women have been taking on this unraveling and this like, this is enough, you know, like we have retold these histories, we have shown our inventions, we have made the point. I feel there is so many women in the music, at least here in Europe. I don't go to any fest. Mostly there's more women than men at the moment, and it's great. You know, where I work, it has been achieved, and I feel this is also interesting that this is possible. So while this is not everywhere like this, and as I said, like in Iran at the moment, women can, I mean, they cannot even show some hair or something. It's still ongoing, this crazy, in many places in the world where women cannot do anything. They cannot go on stage by themselves, you know, they cannot leave the house by themselves. So for me, where I am, there has been something achieved, and this is just the beginning to show that this is possible. And I think of course it has to go on. And in regards to bringing back these histories, I also feel bias and what's going on in the internet and what's retold and multiplied by millions of algorithms all the time. When I have been digging out these and relearning these histories of what women have actually really done and has been just forgotten or not retold, that just bring it back. And it is also kind of, for me, a form of counter engaging with the constant narrative of the patriarchy, shortly speaking. Yeah. But yeah.
Thank you. Both of those responses were incredibly powerful. And also these projects that both of you have alluded to have links and websites. We'll be sure to publish it on the reader with a set of those links. And maybe the three of us can even share a couple extra links if this conversation has brought up anything interesting, just as like resources that could be linked to as well. I mean, it just reminds me on clothes that we should always bring up the work of Art and Feminism, the organization as well, and their Wikipedia-thons, and how powerful it is to just have civic powered time to put those references and things we know down in writing on the internet so that they don't exist not online. But there's so much more. And thank you, AG, for sharing your work. Thank you, Asha, for opening up new questions. It's a pleasure for space. I'll thank on behalf of the Goethe-Institut as well, who's still here on the call.